Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon, and I'm the Dean of Graduate Studies at Charles Darwin University, and welcome to Outrider 19, How to Finish Your PhD Quickly. Last week we talked about why you need to finish your PhD quickly, like for yourself, for your family, for your friends, for your bank balance. But this week we're going to show how you do this. So I particularly want to do a shout out to all our brand new wonderful students at CDU. Who have joined us in the middle of the year. We are so excited to walk with you on this journey. It's absolutely brilliant. And of course, as I always say, let's begin with the end in mind. Let's talk about you and what the ending looks like, and we begin with that white light of the completion in front of you. And look, for all our friends around the world and our friends at CDU who are feeling a bit lost today, lost their way a bit, not quite sure how they're going to finish, there may be one technique that we talk about today that will transform how you think about your thesis and get the show on the road again, get momentum happening. So to quote that great philosopher Jerry Halliwell, scream if you want to go faster. So we're going to go faster today. You ready? Let's do this. Come on. Right, 1. How do you speed up your PhD? 1. Establish your research problem quickly. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about research questions, and endlessly people go, research question. No. Actually, for me, that's forgetting a crucial stage. We need to start every PhD with the question, what is the research problem? Put another way, in simpler language, if you will, what problem are you trying to solve? That's a great question. Can I say it's not only transformative of a PhD, but all the research that we do. I start every new research project that I enact with, what problem am I trying to solve? And once you've got that sort of the problem you're trying to solve, the next question is, okay, what is the gap in knowledge? This is crucial. So what is your PhD going to do in that gap? So you've located a problem, located a gap in knowledge. Now you're going to situate your PhD in that gap and speak the words, write the sentences that confirms your role in filling out the knowledge in that gap. So I want you to organise your PhD really quickly. Locate the research problem, locate the research gap. And once you've done that, you're ready to go because you know what the problem is and that problem can propel you through your research. So what you need to do is cut away the flab, cut away the excess, cut away the cul-de-sacs. What is the problem that you are trying to solve? And then solve it. And from that point, you can construct the methodology, the ontology, the epistemology to solve it. But you have the foundation, can I say, for a really strong introduction and conclusion. What problem are you trying to solve? 2, read. Read a lot, read quickly, take good notes. The crucial strategy to finishing quickly is reading, and reading a lot. And particularly, I think, students, colleagues, don't use the 3 months before they enrol as effectively as they should. So once you've been admitted into a program, you may want to drink your own body weight in Chardonnay with excitement. I understand that. Bless you. But what I would say to you is use those 3 months to read and read widely. Yes, please use the setup document that I've made freely available, and students that use the setup document do incredibly well. It speeds up the enrolment enormously. And can I say, my wonderful student Piper, hi Piper, who's just started, did an amazing thing. She did the setup document. We had a long first meeting and we really tightened up the research in that first meeting. And then she did the setup document again to show the work we've done. And now the project is this beautiful, shiny, magnificent object, and we're working on ethics clearances right now. It's the fastest thesis I've ever seen. So if you want to finish, you need to read, and you need to read hard. You need to read a lot. Read your field. You need to know, okay, you've located that gap we just talked about. But is it a gap, or is it a gap in your mind because you haven't read enough? So, okay, you've found a gap, but then you need to do the really deep and wide-ranging reading to confirm that it actually is a gap. Okay, crucial. And always remember that your examiners start reading your thesis at the back. That means the first thing we read, I'm examining 2 PhDs at the moment. They're sitting on my floor over there. The first thing we read is we look at your reference list. So we turn and go, okay, let's have a look at the reference list. Let's look at the bibliography. So start right at the beginning of your PhD, working on that reference list, making the reference list look shiny and beautiful. So read always, read early, and remember to use our libraries and librarians. And say you haven't got access to your university yet because you've applied and been accepted, but you haven't quite enrolled yet, then please use the directory of open access books and the directory of open access journals. Everything that's there is free and magnificent and available for you today, now, right now. Most importantly, read other theses. Now, I always get my students right at the beginning of their enrolment to read 5 other PhDs in their particular field. And the reason I do that is I want my students to understand the genre of a PhD. It's a particular genre of writing. So they have a sense of what a completed thesis looks like, begin with the end in mind. While reading is great, reading without good note-taking is not terribly efficient because you're too reliant on your memory. So at the very start of a PhD, create a system to configure and construct your notes and to store your notes. There are plenty of strategies, wonderful strategies for note-taking out there. Select a strategy and stick with it. And please use external hard drives to back up those notes. I use an external hard drive in the morning and night every day. I'm not prepared to lose a day's work. That's how you finish quickly. Great note-taking saves you months of your life and months of your candidature. And of course, the great news is if you have a great note-taking system in your PhD, it means for the rest of your career, you can use the notes from that PhD to enable other research projects. Very efficient, brilliant. 3, here we go. Write all the way through a candidature. This is the trick. Assuming that dreadful phrase, I'm in the writing up phase of my thesis. That is nonsense. That's how you end up with long candidatures, by the way. People go, I'm writing up. Are you really? From the first week of your enrolment, you need to be writing. And for example, write what I call with my students discussion papers. So they're reading something and they're just in a really relaxed fashion writing up their interpretation of what they are reading, or they're putting the problem into the work. They found an issue with a definition of a particular term, and so they write 1,000 words on that problematic definition. Now, we're doing that for many reasons, but most importantly, we learn to write by writing. So write all the way through your enrolment. Now, a student recently contacted me and asked if I could provide him with a template for a PhD. And I was a little bit confused. And I said, look, every thesis is different. It's a genre, but they vary widely dependent on the discipline and the mode of thesis in which you are enrolled. And I said, have you read other theses in your particular discipline? And he said, no. But most frighteningly, he said he was actually due in 3 months. And he hadn't started writing yet, he was writing up. Wow, frightening. So write all the way through. And I ask my students, particularly in that complicated first year, to give me 1,000 words in a discussion document, discussion, little paper, fantastic, every single week. What you've been reading, the big ideas and the issues. And of course, what that does is that relaxes students with their writing, okay? And it's amazing, so many of those little discussion papers end up directly in the thesis. And it confirms, of course, that we learn to write by writing. 4, supervisory selection is everything. Picking your supervisor, picking your advisor. A great supervisor can save you years. Yep, years. And the reason they can save you years is because they know the field. They've done the deep reading. They continue to read deeply and widely. They write. They put themselves through peer review all the time. They undertake professional development. They understand, and this is the trick, team, They understand the standard of a PhD. What does a pass in a PhD look like? And they're able to read your drafts quickly and help you and know how to help you. So really check. And I know I get really nasty emails from supervisors around the world when I say this, but team, check your supervisor. Do your homework. Is your supervisor intensely research active? Check that they can actually write, that they haven't spent their career as, author 4 of 10. Make sure they can actually write. Check that they have continued to learn, that they are participating in professional development, that they're not, I know everything, I don't do professional development, I haven't done professional development since Kylie Minogue was in the charts the first time with Locomotion. Okay, so make sure that these people actually are intellectually generous and open to learning about other ideas and other ways of doing things. That's really important. It's a flexibility of mind that is really important for supervision. And please just try and make sure they know what they're doing. I know there's all this talk at the moment about supervising your supervisor and advising your advisor and, what do they call it? Managing up? Is it managing up? Well, you don't have to manage up if someone can manage. You don't have to supervise your supervisor. If they know how to supervise, you can get on with your thesis, which is your job. But if a supervisor is already in place and you've got a supervisor and it's all okay, no worries. But understand the strengths and the weaknesses of your supervisor. This is crucial. Talk with other students. Ask them how long they took to finish. And go into the candidature knowing what you have to do as a student to get this thesis through and how you're going to work with your supervisor. And, ask your supervisor if they're happy to help you finish this thesis at speed. You've heard me say so often that students don't ask enough questions of their supervisors, and they don't ask enough questions about the previous students of those supervisors. You may have an outstanding researcher who does not know how to supervise. They overlap. Being a great researcher is crucial to being a supervisor, but just because you're a great researcher doesn't mean you can supervise. They're a different skill set. And remember that, look, it's a pleasure to supervise. Okay, it's a pleasure to supervise. It's great. Having a nice cup of coffee with really bright people. This is very pleasant. So anybody can really supervise. Fewer people can supervise to completion, and even fewer people can supervise to completion in the minimum time. That's a very specific skill set. But what we need to do is understand the strengths and the weaknesses of your particular supervisor and create that supervisory team that includes your friends, your family, your partner, your colleagues, to enhance the strengths of your supervisor and manage your weaknesses. So let me give you an example of my profound weakness. So my students need to know this is a weakness that I have in my supervisory practice. Now, I am a Dean of Graduate Studies and I am a professor and I have a lot of students. So therefore, my time is not my own. My timetable every week is not my own. I am run by Microsoft Outlook calendars, right? And what I do to make sure my students get time is I put in their 30-minute meeting in my calendar for the whole year. So I just go repeat 12 months, right? So it's there. So other people have to put their meetings around my student meetings. And that's great. But it means I don't have flexibility. So if a student misses a meeting, I can't make that meeting up. Right? So, Tara, I've got a dentist appointment. So sorry, I'll see you next week, right? So I have to be a really rigid supervisor. And if you like flexibility and you want to have a cup of coffee with your supervisor, I am not your girl. I don't have cups of coffee. I haven't got time to have a nice lunch with people. Don't have that time. I will give you a meeting every week, but I don't have the flexibility. So very importantly, tell your supervisor if you want to complete quickly. Now, I ask all my students in meeting 1, what is your expectation about completion? Do you want to complete a quick PhD? And if they say yes, we then move through a very complicated discussion to show what's required from me and what's required of them to get them through quickly. And we do that in meeting 1. Okay, 5. Use deadlines and milestones to your advantage. Now, this is a big one. The students that finish on time complete their milestones on schedule. Full stop. So when I'm looking at students who have a progression issue, right, which is what a dean does. So a student's got a problem and I go back through the student file. The first thing I look for is if their milestones have been delivered late. So if they've delayed them, if they've asked for an extension, the moment you're mucking about with milestones and you're unable to have a milestone deadline, your thesis is going to blow out unless you make a decision to do something differently today. Therefore, for our colleagues about to start, make sure your confirmation of candidature, your mid-thesis review, your final thesis review is delivered on time. And make sure in these milestones you get external assessors to look at your work. They can be within the institution, but you need another set of eyes beyond your supervisor to just have a look at the work that you're doing. And this is great. And of course, you know, my students, I always get external, fantastic, brilliant scholars to assess their work. And the reason I do that is I read a lot and I write a lot, but you know what? I could be making a mistake. I could be missing a chunk of literature. And I value so much the views of two assessors who are looking at the work cleanly and saying, right, well, that's interesting. Have you thought about this? And invariably, the assessors offer brilliant commentary, right? So use these punctuation points in your candidature. Use those milestones to check the standards of your research. And then the reason we use milestones is it enables you to backwardly map your degree. Also use all sorts of small deadlines to help you. So if you're saying yes to a conference, that's great. You're saying yes to a particular publication, you know, a special edition of something, that's great. Accept it and abide by those deadlines. Make sure that everything you say yes to is within the nest of the PhD. Don't lose one word that you're writing. Make sure everything you write goes somewhere into the PhD. 6. This is an increasingly big one, I think. 6. Remember to select a thesis area that is possible to finish. Let me explain. If you walk into a topic knowing that an ethics process is going to be lengthy, then you're admitting at the start that you're going to have troubles finishing. So I see so many students that select a topic that can't be finished. It's not actually a thesis, it's sort of a vibe. It's so big it can't be finished. Or it certainly can't be finished in a finite period. So if you want a quick PhD, then the first thing you have to do is select a topic which is bounded, which has a frame around it. And we need to all, post-COVID, learn the lessons from COVID, all right? So for our students that are starting right now, you need to start with your eyes wide open that things could go seriously wrong for the planet. So what this means, colleagues, is, okay, you've got your research problem, you've got your research questions. Make sure there is a plan B methodology that you can swing in to answer some or all of those research questions. That's the lesson that COVID taught us. Your PhD is not the best research you will ever complete. It is the worst research you will ever complete. You are in research training. So I think the other thing people forget with the PhD when they're making it this incredibly big deal is the PhD is a qualification. The PhD is a degree. And like all degrees, you start it and you finish it. 7. This could change your life. Put your entire thesis into one document as quickly as possible. This is a big one. I cannot tell you what placing all your work, all your research into one document does to your brain, because suddenly you think, you take a breath, you go, wow, this is actually a thesis. I can see it. It has a shape. It is the biggest relief when you're able to work off one document in your PhD. Indeed, I often get my students, particularly like Piper, that are really working quickly, I get them to start with one full document, put their chapter headings in, and off they go, right? It's an amazing moment. That's how you finish quickly. And the sense of achievement for students is also really clear, but also for students that, have got family responsibilities and work and caring responsibilities, if you've got the whole document and the whole document's in your Vista, you can pick a particular job on a particular day that suits where you're at and the time available, and you work directly into that document. So task and time orientation align. Now, this full PhD draft keeps you incredibly motivated and remind you what actually you're doing. See, long candidatures destroy lives because you haven't got the money, your supervisors might leave the university, your supervisors might die. Everything we talked about last week can happen. The longer the candidature, the more mess can occur in that candidature. But also I think long candidatures create problems with motivation, and I understand this. How can any of us be sort of interested in something for like 10 years? Wow. So remember, start the PhD seeing the ending, and that'll give you motivation and that'll give you meaning. Get up in the morning. Get up in the morning. And you're getting up in the morning because every morning you work, you're one day closer to finishing this thing, right? So dig deep, work hard, and progress at speed. And when you do that, it's amazing how it picks up your motivation. Students that have problems completing a PhD, when I ask them what's going wrong, 90% of the time the student replies with, I'm overwhelmed. And you might be exactly feeling that way at the moment yourself. I'm just overwhelmed by the PhD. And that's okay. But that's the gift of putting the entire thesis into one document, because you're not overwhelmed. Suddenly you can actually see it. The end is in sight. You know what you're doing. So wake up, do the predictable, do the boring tasks, finish your PhD. I cannot tell you how many students have finished a PhD writing 250 words a day. For some students, giving themselves a deadline. 250 words a day, that's all. I will not stop. Doesn't matter if it's a good day, bad day, 250 words a day. Now, for some students, particularly our part-timers with caring responsibilities, the word limit, the word length way of getting work moving operates brilliantly for you. So have a think about that as a strategy for a month, say. For 1 month, see if it works for you, write 250 words a day. And I know there are some students that write 500 words a day. Try 250 to see if that gets you moving again. Now, Professor Teresa McHale stated something quite fantastically. She stated, quote, because writing is thinking, brilliant thoughts do not just appear on the page after long hours of arduous musings on a subject. In my experience, the best ideas almost always come through the act of writing itself. End of quote. Isn't that brilliant? And I agree with that. And you see, so we write all the time. We write to think. We're thinking through writing. And that avoids the dreadful writing up at the end disaster. It also ensures that students remain connected to their thesis every single day. Now, I've seen so many students, often students on a scholarship, not finish the thesis when the scholarship concludes. And so therefore, they're still working on the thesis, the scholarship's ended, and their lives sort of cascade into mental health concerns, poverty, some very, very dark places. So if you need motivation to finish, do it for the money. Just do it for the money. I didn't have an option in my career except to finish a thesis quickly. I was on a 12-month contract. I wouldn't have got another job if I hadn't finished the thesis in that 12 months. So I finished it in 2 years because I had to. There was no plan B. So for those of you that have got a tiny bit of money from a stipend or a scholarship, then please aim to finish the thesis when that stipend finishes, please, for me. Because when that funding source runs out, you will cascade into some quite complicated spaces. So a good quick PhD is good for your health, it's good for your bank balance, and I know there's a lot of work at the moment, and work that I respect, can I say, looking at, working balance, lifestyle balance, stopping work. And I get all of that, and I respect a lot of that lifestyle, work and life balance material. I do. I've read the research. I like it a lot. The problem is a PhD is not really about a work and life balance. And if you don't finish in the shortest possible time, then your life gets away from you. So that's always the thing. I want you walking, I want you having leisure, I want you to have time with your family. I do, it's important. But I'm also aware that unless you really commit and are disciplined in working on that thesis, you won't finish in the minimum period of time, and some very disturbing things happen to your life if you don't. Okay, so from the old dean, try and get this thing finished for me, okay? Try and get this thing finished. 8, learn to take feedback. Taking feedback is tough, particularly if it's offered in some pretty tough language. But the best students, the best researchers, I would argue, but the best students take the tough, hard critiques early. And in fact, they ask for the tough, hard critiques early. If your supervisors, your peer reviews, your assessors in a milestone ask a big question early on that seems a bit of a deal breaker in your thesis, that question, that critique is a gift to you. It is a gift. It's very easy to ignore uncomfortable truths, particularly when you're in a PhD. And if you think about it, so much of our culture is based on moving towards the pleasant, moving towards the comfortable. So not reading the really difficult work or the difficult refereed research, and sort of like just drifting to Instagram. Right? So our whole culture is based on, let's make it easy for ourselves. Let's make it comfortable. And look, I understand why that exists. It's uncomfortable to be uncomfortable. But it is the grit in the oyster that creates the pearl. The problem, I think, the issue that emerges from that robust feedback early on invariably ends up being the gift of your thesis, because you've heard me say it thousands of times, you put the problem into the work. That crucial feedback that emerges, particularly in that 6-month to 8-month period of your candidature, not only makes the thesis, but ensures a rapid completion to that thesis. These early critiques are about, research design, methodology, or a whole chunk of theory that you've forgotten about or you haven't engaged with. So ask for that tough feedback early on and really listen to it. A lot of my students actually say, Tara, give me the hard critique. Give me the deal breaker, Tara. Give me the deal breaker. And they ask for it, and I give it to them, and we talk about how to resolve it. Ask for the tough feedback. 9, regular meetings are the characteristic of quick finishers. The characteristic of students that finish quickly involves weekly meetings. This seems, I know, horrible for a lot of students and a lot of supervisors, but it creates an accountability cycle. You have to front with work once a week. And so you meet with your supervisor, you meet with your advisor, and both of you have to get together, and it just creates that momentum. Okay, so I know it might be uncomfortable and you want to sort of go away and do your own thing. Front up, see your supervisor once a week, get that feedback, and you will finish quickly. 10, here it is. Stay connected with your thesis every single day. And yes, this one includes our part-time students. In fact, it's particularly for our part-time students. Now, I had a student in my office in one of my former jobs, and she was seriously over time. I was trying to do everything I could to help her, but she was seriously over time. And she said to me, "But Tara, I've only got the introduction left to write. 2 days work. I've only got the introduction left to write. 2 days. Now, I tried to be as empathic with her as I could, but it had got to the point where I had to offer her a really tough truth. And I replied to her, "It's October. When we had our meeting in March, you said to me, I've only got the introduction to do, and it's 2 days' work. Well, in those 8 months, you haven't found 2 days. Terrible hard truth, but that's the point. That's the point. Hoping that you're gonna write on the weekend, you got a public holiday, you got the Christmas break, gonna, coulda, shoulda, you're gonna do this. Do it. Don't talk about it, do it. And most importantly, if you don't do it, you start to lose connection with your thesis. The best strategy for the students that finish is little and often, even half an hour a day, but make it every day. Stay connected with your thesis. That is how you finish. Because there's never a perfect time to do a PhD. Never. Waiting for an easy month or annual leave or the Christmas break is not going to work. There is no right time to do a PhD. Life is difficult. There are difficult days, weeks, months, years. Don't wait for the perfect time. Right now. Don't wait for the right time to read now. Don't wait for the right time to write now. Write and read on the difficult days. That's our 10. And if we bring them all together, that is how you finish a PhD quickly. And a PhD is tough, it is. And I often describe my life as a bucket, because I'm classy like that. But if your bucket of life is already full, you can't pour a PhD into it because it will overflow out of the bucket. So before you start a PhD, you have to look at your bucket. And if it is full, ask yourself, what can be removed from the bucket to make some space and a place for that PhD? And that might involve very complicated conversations with your partner or your family about these responsibilities for the next 3 years I can't do to make space in my bucket. And that's an honest, robust conversation to make the thesis work. And when we activate this whole of household, family, friend group, community solution to a PhD, we can finish it quickly. I wish you love, light, and peace. Tea out.